Hi guys, so David Davis, the former negotiator under Theresa May, who was sent to Brussels to agree the withdrawal agreement with the European Union, was interviewed by GB News about the current situation with the Northern Ireland Protocol. Now, David had a very weird framing of how things are going, making references to things that may happen, but are currently happening. He also blamed the Irish for the current situation, which doesn't make a lot of sense as Boris Johnson sold the withdrawal agreement as an oven-ready deal and it would fix all of the UK's problems. Anyway, let's hear what he had to say.
Well, he's doing the right thing. I mean, this problem starts right back in December 3rd, 2017, when Theresa May gave in to the Irish, basically, to have full alignment, as they called it, between a regulation north and south.
Okay, what he's talking about here is the backstop. She didn't give in to the Irish. There was a situation. Okay, the UK had the possibility of staying within the single market and the customs union. Then it wouldn't require having a border on the island of Ireland or a border in the Irish Sea. But the problem was the ERG, the hardline Brexiteers, were not happy with that. Ironically, also the DUP were not happy with that. So this was not going to be a viable solution, it seems. So what happened eventually was Boris Johnson agreed a different withdrawal agreement, which put a border in the Irish Sea. Now, you can't blame the Irish for that. The Irish didn't vote for Brexit. The Irish didn't want Brexit. The European Union didn't want Brexit. Even the people of Northern Ireland didn't want Brexit. They had Brexit inflicted upon them. And the government in London didn't want a border in the Irish Sea or a border on the island of Ireland while Theresa May was Prime Minister. So the solution was the backstop until an agreement could be made. So the UK as a whole would remain within the single market and the customs union until a further agreement was made. But Boris Johnson and the Brexiteers didn't want that, so eventually the solution was to have a border. But to protect the Good Friday Agreement, the border was put in the Irish Sea. But you can't blame the Irish or the EU for that, because they didn't want it.
And we've not got off that hook since, although Boris struggled to do it, Lord Frost himself struggled to do it, they didn't get off the hook. And so we're still stuck with a position where where Northern Ireland is sort of a member of the European Union.
What? Northern Ireland is not a member of the European Union. It's not even sort of a member of the European Union. Northern Ireland has access to the single market. That's it. It isn't a member of the European Union. Now, either David Frost doesn't understand this or he's pretending not to understand this. But remember, this is a consequence of the type of Brexit Boris Johnson and the ERG wanted.
In a way, that's how the rules work.
Although outside the customs union.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, but nevertheless, it puts, or if it works the way the Europeans want it to work, it'll put a border down the Irish Sea. It'll cause problems for...
It will put a border down the Irish Sea. I had to check, but this was recorded a few days ago. This was not recorded years ago. It will put a border. There is a border down the Irish Sea, David. How far behind current events is David Davis?
For the operation of business in Northern Ireland, but also it will cause a problem for the Good Friday Agreement, and this was the excuse for it, remember? And
once again, you have these Brexiteers who will say the protocol will impact the Good Friday Agreement, and they don't demonstrate how. They don't explain how the protocol harms the Good Friday Agreement. They just make these blank statements. These blanket statements of, yes, it's going to undermine the Good Friday Agreement, it's going to undermine peace, but they never explain how. They just say it. But that's not enough. You actually have to provide evidence, because the protocol is there to protect the Good Friday Agreement.
Frost said not so long ago that the terms by which we could trigger what's called Article 16 of the protocol have been met, and that would basically negate it. Why hasn't the government triggered it?
No, it doesn't negate it. Another person who doesn't understand Article 16. Article 16 is there to protect the protocol, not to cancel the protocol. I really wish these Brexiteers would read Article 16 and understand what it actually says. It doesn't say this cancels the protocol. It's an insurance policy against cancelling the protocol.
Well, because what will happen when they trigger it is there'll be a lawsuit, and the...
No, look, it depends on how it's triggered. It depends on many factors. If either side trigger Article 16, there's a process. It has to go to the Joint Committee. The Joint Committee have to discuss it. It takes time in order to trigger Article 16. But triggering Article 16 does not mean that there's going to be a lawsuit against the UK in some way. It may happen, but it depends on a number of factors. It's not automatic.
One of the problems in the negotiation so far is the sides have been getting further apart, not closer together.
And look, this is extremely frustrating because there aren't negotiations. The negotiations took place back in 2019. You were part of the negotiations. They didn't go very well. Boris Johnson sent Lord Frost, the unelected bureaucrat, and then he negotiated with the European Union, and they came up with the withdrawal agreement. And then the negotiations finished for the withdrawal agreement. Then there were other negotiations for Boris Johnson's trade deal with the European Union. But there aren't negotiations taking place with the protocol or the withdrawal agreement. You have to implement it. The EU is saying, please implement the protocol. And you're not doing that. They aren't negotiations.
Normally when you have a negotiation, they get closer together over time. It actually is getting further apart. So,
sorry to be interrupting every few seconds, but you wanted to go in the opposite direction. The European Union said, look, how about we have this agreement where the UK stays within the single market and the customs union, and we don't have to put a border in the Irish Sea. But Boris Johnson and the Brexiteers didn't want that. They wanted to go in the opposite direction. So why is David Davis talking about coming together when one side wanted to go in the opposite direction? The EU wanted to come to the side of the UK and say, let's agree something that's positive for Northern Ireland. And the solution was the protocol. Now you want to ditch that.
So, and triggering Article 16 will push them even further apart. So he's right to raise the prospect. He's right to mean it too, because at least that gives the European Union a chance to come back into the fold and argue sensibly. What they have done, you see, is they've sort of interpreted the Good Friday Agreement from one side. Yeah. And David Trimble, who put his life on the line, he won a Nobel Prize for getting it, but he put his life on the line. He's the only man who's been threatened by both sides, has said in terms, this is undermining the Good Friday Agreement. So
I don't give a crap what David Trimble said. I want to see evidence. David Trimble is a Brexiteer. But David Trimble is also saying that the Northern Ireland Protocol is undermining the Good Friday Agreement. But he hasn't actually demonstrated how. Once again, I don't care who the hell says this is undermining the Good Friday Agreement. I want to see evidence of that. Just saying David Trimble said it's undermining is not enough. I'm afraid that's not evidence. You actually have to provide evidence of how it's been undermined. And you notice that these journalists who are completely useless never actually challenge the politicians and ask them, so please, David, explain to us in simple language, how is the Northern Ireland Protocol undermining the Good Friday Agreement? I'd love to hear it, but you never hear it because they're not interested in actually holding these people to account. They're just interested in letting them spew these types of lies and misinformation.
Lord Frost has got the moral high ground in this, and the European Union has got to shape up.
Lord Frost has got the moral high ground. How does he have the moral high ground? Please explain to me how he has the moral high ground. Lord Frost negotiated the withdrawal agreement. Lord Frost signed the withdrawal agreement. Lord Frost sold the withdrawal agreement as an oven-ready deal, as a solution to all of Britain's problems. And now he's saying it's not working. Please tell me how he has the moral high ground here. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.